Thank you, councillors, staff and members of the public. I would like to declare this meeting open, and in doing so acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land, the Wadandi Noongar people, and pay our respects to elders past, present and future. There are a couple of announcements from myself. Just in front of us here we have the climate change declaration, which was signed yesterday from the Walga, so that is now signed and looking for a home somewhere, which I'll pass over to Gavin, probably at the depot. We've also, during last week, wrote to the Honourable Alex Hawke, Minister of Immigration, at the request of Councillor Gassett, which I supported, writing to that Minister, asking that he consider fast-tracking all Ukrainian refugee applications, and also noting that the City of Bunbury would be encouraging refugees to settle in the city. So I'll circulate that letter with councillors. And lastly, the last announcement for myself is that the smallest stage, the show that was run or organised through the BREC, finished in Perth last week. I happened to go to that show, which was a very good show. It was a bit of a different show. It was done live action, I guess you call it, but it was very interesting, very well done from the BREC, and I noticed that the ABC reported on that, and this was some news coming through. That story had 1.3 million views of that story, so it was obviously seen by quite a few people. So yes, well done to the BREC and all those involved in that show. Thank you. We have apologies from Councillor Kozisek, and we're all here besides that. We do have a couple of forms of declaration of interest there, councillors. Was there any further to add other than the ones in front of us? No? Thank you. Could I have somebody move the confirmation of the previous minutes? Thank you, councillors. Councillor Plum. Seconder, Councillor Quain. I'll put that. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. There are no petitions, presentations, deputations. Councillors, dealing with the council meeting tonight, we have item 10.3.2, the budget review, coming out, and also 10.4.1 coming out. Was there any further items councillors would like to deal with, being 10.3.1 or 10.3.3? No? Could I have somebody move the balance moved on block? Thank you, Councillor Plum, mover. Seconder, Councillor McCleary. I'll put that. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So 10.32 is our February budget review. Could I have somebody move that, please? Councillor McCleary. Second by Councillor Giles. Is there likely to be any debate on this one, councillors? I'll put that. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So this brings us to item 10.4.1. We have an executive recommendation in front of us as it stands. Is there a mover for this executive recommendation? Councillor Steele. Is there a seconder? No seconder. That recommendation is lapsed. I do believe there is an alternative recommendation. Minute taker, do you have an alternative recommendation on, well, first of all, do I have somebody happy to move an alternative recommendation?
So moved, sir.
Councillor Steck. Councillor Giles seconds that. We might just get that wording first and make sure you're comfortable with the alternative recommendation, Councillor Steck, and just give that an opportunity to let that go in.
I'd also like a note 4, please.
Sure.
And the 4 haven't got the wording, but essentially I want the this whole thing, our policy in relation to sheds and things, to go back to the policy committee.
So what policy exactly are we referring to, Councillor? Have you got wording around that policy, minute taker or acting CEO?
I'm not sure of the number of the policy at
Yep.
this point in time, but there is a policy pertaining
Yes.
to these.
Thanks.
And I would just like that to be circulated back to the policy committee.
Sure, Councillor Steck. I'll just bear with us a minute. We'll just get the actual policy you're referring to. Acting CEO, are you aware of what?
Through Mr Mayor, I think our team leader of statutory planning will probably have the name of the policy.
Through the Mayor, the local planning policy is Local Planning Policy 3.4, Outbuildings and Minor Structures.
Thank you for that.
And Councillor Steck, so we'll just get this wording correctly. Councillor Giles, were you satisfied with that, it being the second of the alternative recommendation? Yes. Yes, Councillor McCreary.
I don't quite understand why we would be attaching, are we going to attach that we go back to the policy committee, not going to attach that? That was just my query.
We're just getting the wording up, Councillor McCleary.
Okay.
Just bear with us for one moment.
Very, Mr Mayor.
Councillor McCleary.
Thank you. With respect that number 4, I can't see how that relates to the person who wishing to build this outbuilding. This is separate. Certainly, if there was a motion put forward separately that policy goes for review, but I don't see why it should be attached to this one. To this
I'll take that as a question, Councillor McCreary. Why is this item being attached? I'll ask the CEO, directly to the CEO. Item 4 CEO, does that affect the recommendation in any way? And does it have any influence on the actual outcome of the recommendation?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think we would have to reword it. So the alternative recommendation as it stands is an approval in the part 1, 2 and 3 are the conditions of the approval. So we would have to change probably the current 4 to part 1, that the policy be reviewed, and then part 2, that the application be approved in accordance. That makes sense?
So it may have to be yeah.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Sure. Councillor, yep.
What's the change? Sorry. What's the change from the executive recommendation?
So the main change for the initial part of the recommendation, part 1 now, compared to the previous, the executive recommendation was initially, which was not moved, which lapsed, was to refuse this, and this is now to approve the application. And then this part that is being added is just requesting that the policy then come back for review of the policy committee.
Well, Mr Mayor, can I speak to the amendment?
Councillor Steck, just before you do, we'll just make sure we get the wording exactly right to make sure we're on the same page.
Questions.
Questions, Councillor Steele?
If we're going to go against the exec's recommendation of actually rejecting it because it didn't actually comply, how are we able to now do
Yep.
this? Only because I remember when a lady with brain tumour came in and wouldn't have her fence 30 centimetres more, and we all said voted against that. So I'm a bit confused
Yep.
how we can do this for a shed.
Yep. So, Councillor Steele, because it's a policy, at the moment, the recommendations from the officers was complying with the current policy, which there wasn't support to, or that motion initially lapsed. So, obviously, Council has discretion to not comply with this policy at the time, but I might ask, once the CEO is back, I'll ask him to elaborate on that further. But in a nutshell, that is the discretion of Council. See, I'm not sure if you picked up on that part. The question was, how are we able to go against executive recommendation, which I've just elaborated being a policy, but feel free to add anything further, Mr. CEO.
That's correct, Mr Mayor. So it's council policy. The council has the discretion to vary its policies, officers don't. So the recommendation the staff put forward was in line with the council policy. If council was of a mind to approve the development against that policy, then they have the ability to, because it is the council's policy.
Right. So, councillors, we have now a recommendation, which the alternative recommendation there, and then that's as it is, the planning side of things, and then a part 2 down the bottom as Councillor Steck moved. Is that the wording? Okay, and we do need to take these separately, apparently. So, the entire recommendation is, Councillor Steck, if you're satisfied with the wording around that. Floor is yours now, Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's just that I'll start with the policy pertaining to this outbuilding. In this case, it's a shed. Council itself has had several matters come before it, requiring our attention through discretionary for a shed for a caravan, a shed for, a boat, a shed for other things. And clearly, and as staff has also admitted, clearly that our community has outgrown our policy. The policy does not fit our community members. More people have boats, more people have caravans. Our shed height is too small. We need to address it urgently so that we are not scrutinising every person that brings a shed before us. If it complies, it complies. A policy is not like a town planning scheme. We have the capacity to change the policy at any point in time. Town planning schemes you don't. That'll take you about a year to 15 months. So very easy for this to go back to the policy committee. Very easy for us to approve this because it's just a simple matter. It's not a difficult decision. Thank you.
Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, generally I don't like to vote against executive recommendations. In this instance, as it is a policy and it's such a small amount, I think it was 300 mils or something like that, a difference in what was asked for as to what the executive was able to approve. I think in this instance it's worthwhile doing this, and I think taking it back to policy committee is also a very good idea just to check that we are keeping up with the times. Thank you.
Is there a speaker against? Councillor Plum?
Sorry, Mr Mayor, just a question if I may.
Sure.
I'm just wondering if, since Council's just only had a minute to have a look at this item now, I believe it was the height and the proximity to the boundary were the two main compliance issues. Can I just ask for those to be listed now, if that's possible?
Yep. Acting CEO?
Through Mr Mayor, there was 4 areas. So there's the overall floor area of the shed, the ridge height of the shed, the wall height of the shed, and the side boundary setback, in terms of seeking variation from the policy.
And in essence, I think, final part of that question, Councillor Plum, the original recommendation, nothing is, or the change in that is the 3.5 metres to 3.8 metres is the main change from this to the previous one, if that's correct, CEO?
Both the ridge height and the wall height.
And the wall. Further questions? Councillor Steele?
You did say the size of it. How much bigger is it than what's actually allowed at the moment?
Acting CEO?
I need to refer that through to the team leader, if that's okay.
Through the Mayor, the local planning policy has a maximum area of 80 square metres, and that varies the R codes, which only has about 60 square metres. And this development proposes a floor area of 108 square metres.
So just to confirm, we're already 20 metres square over, and this is actually going to be now 48 centimetres, 48, so basically double.
Any further questions, councillors, or speakers against? Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a time, our policy, size does matter, okay, in this particular instance. We're also assuming that the policy committee, without it actually going to the committee, are going to assume that they're going to change the policy for this to fit. So that is, they haven't had the discussion yet. If the policy committee may or may not decide that we are going to be changing and making our policy taller, bigger, stronger, whatever. So I can't possibly, at this time, vote for this with that particular amendment in there when it comes in, because we still end up with a 12 metre by 9 metre with a 3.8 and a ridge height of 5 metres in a residential area. Until our policies change, I feel, and I strongly recommend, because that may not go to our policy committee for another month or so, that anyone else who has had a shed that has come to council to be approved or disapproved have worked on what our policy is. And tonight, we want to fit this in by saying, oh yeah, but we'll assume our policy committee is going to change this so this can happen. So I would strongly recommend, if the person would like to drop it, resubmit at a later time, if the policy committee decide to change our policy, then is the time. Otherwise, tonight, we vote this down because it does not follow our policy at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCreary. Is there a speaker for? Councillor Steck. Before you do close, Councillor Steck, sorry, just so we're all clear, we will deal with this first part and then the part two before. We'll vote on them separately. Just clarifying that as well. Thank you, Councillor Steck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, I'll give you a preamble that if it is part two is voted down, you will have a motion on notice from me. The other thing is that I just want to say, in the past we have been called a handbrake council. That is a tagline that I am grateful we got rid of. A handbrake council is a council that doesn't approve things when they should. And a policy is not set in stone. It is a moving document. There shouldn't be any fear about changing a policy, especially when our staff members, our senior staff and our middle staff have already been explaining to us that our policy doesn't go far enough. And when you want to talk about a size of a shed, well, most people have camping trailers as well. Most people don't want to leave them outside. What if you've got a classic car and a boat? You need the extra room in your shed. This is the lifestyle that we enjoy in Bunbury. Heaps of people have camper vans, heaps of people have caravans, and heaps of people have boats. And if you've got two of them items, you need the bigger space in your shed and the extra gear that you use to go camping with or other things. So this is not going against council. It's making better decisions. It's being more movable with our community, and the community's wishes are what we're here for. So I urge the councillors to actually vote for the motion, for both of them, because you're not pre-guessing anything, because I can guarantee you, I reckon that if this part two goes to the review committee, then they will make changes to it. I'm certain of it. And I thank councillors for their time, and I hope you vote for them both.
Thank you, Councillor Steck. So to be clear again, the alternative recommendation is that council in accordance, and then point 1, 2, 3 with the advice notes. I will put that. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, those in favour? Those in favour first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4. Those against? Those against, 6 against, and I'll use my casting vote to vote in favour. That is carried. Part 2 of that. That council requests the CEO present the local planning policy 3.4 outbuilding and be referred to the policy review. Those in favour of that, please indicate. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We have an application of leave from Councillor Steele. If somebody move that one, please. Councillor Steck and Councillor Giles seconder. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Which brings us to a close. Thank you very much, councillors. I declare this meeting closed at 5:49. Thank you.